I feel like I haven't sat down to film in so long. I don't even know if I know how to do this anymore. Hi friends, my name is Jess and welcome back to my channel, Books Fast Bedtime. Today, since it is just about the turn of the season, I'm going to bring you some of my favorite fall book recommendations. Now, there's just something amazing and immaculate about the fall vibes, especially when you read seasonally and read some like spooky, scary books with your fall decor and your candles and the crisp air outside. There's just nothing quite hits like that. So hopefully you can find something in this list of books that will be perfect to curl up with this fall. And yeah, let's just get right into it. So I did break this down into 3 categories. So if you're looking for something particular, you can like skip to that section or what have you. So the first kind of section that I have are like books that give me back to school vibes, because back to school is like a big part of fall. So these are books where the characters are like in high school or college, back to school, campus vibes, maybe a little dark academia sprinkled in. That feels very fall to me. So that's going to be our first section. And then in the second section, we are going to talk about some books that have supernatural elements that I love. I feel like spooky, scary, supernatural things are very in theme with fall and Halloween and all of that good stuff. So, and then finally our last section is going to be spooky thrillers. I feel like that's the quintessential kind of book you think of when you think of fall, and I definitely love me some spooky, scary thrillers. So that is going to be the last category that we're going to talk about. I think I have just about 6 books to talk about for every category, so let's just dive right in. So if you're looking for books where the characters are transitioning from high school to college, I feel like Alice Oseman is your girl, and in particular her book Radio Silence as well as Loveless. Radio Silence is about our main character. She's a high school senior and she's not really sure what she wants to do with her life, if she wants to go to college, and she's kind of having trouble navigating those waters. But one thing she is really into is this podcast that is hosted by this anonymous person, and she creates like fan art or fan fiction or something for this podcast and is like really popular in the fandom arena for this podcast. But then she discovers who is actually behind this podcast and starts working on it with them. And it's kind of just about friendship and being in that transitional age, figuring out what you want to do with your life. And I feel like those are very similar to like fall back to school themes, and just like the quiet vibes of Radio Silence I feel like are perfect for like a fall read. It's kind of long, it's kind of a character study. It has some like darker vibes and themes. I feel like it's just like a perfect fall read. I feel like if you've read it, you know what I mean, but I definitely recommend this one. It is an excellent book, and I think it would be perfect to read in the fall. And same goes for one of Alice Oseman's other books, and that is Loveless. This book follows our main character, Georgia, and Georgia is going to college for the first time. It is her first year in university, and she's kind of trying to also navigate the waters. She's not really sure who she is. She has always loved love and writing fan fiction and been really enamored with romance, but she doesn't really see that for herself necessarily. And she kind of throughout this book discovers that she is most likely asexual and aromantic, and so she is trying to navigate both going to college and having this realization about herself. Definitely very like fall back to school kind of vibes with this book. It's her first year of college. It's a lot of fun. Gave me a lot of memories to like my own first year of college, and I just think it's a perfect fall read. It's very in theme with back to school and the time of year it takes place in, and also just like gives you some warm, cozy friendship feelings, which I feel like are good for fall. So definitely would recommend this one as well. It's excellent. I gave it 5 stars. Next on our list in the back to school section is The Infinite Noise by Lauren Shippen. I feel like I've only talked about this book a couple times on my channel before, but I absolutely loved it. It's one of my favorite books that I've read so far this year, and it definitely is on theme with the back to school thing. Our characters are actually in high school in this one, and it's kind of, I think it's like the beginning of the school year when this takes place. I don't know, but it has fall vibes because they're in school. But basically this book also has a supernatural twist to it, because there are like kids in this world that have heightened abilities. One of our main characters is like an empath, but to an extreme where he can literally sense the emotions of everyone around him. He finds this friend who later becomes a little bit more to him that he just like feels calm and at peace around, and kind of helps him keep his emotions in check. So this is just a really sweet romance, and it also shows these kids with heightened abilities going to therapy, which is like really cool representation. This one's just like a really fun, cozy, sweet read. So I feel like it would be perfect for the fall if you're looking for something like lighter and not like spooky scary, but like still fall vibes. you know? Next, I want to talk about one of my favorite series of all time, and I realize I haven't talked about this enough on my channel because I don't feel like anyone knows that this is my favorite series of all time, but that is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. Now, if you're looking for the perfect book to read in fall, this is it. Like, it has everything. It's got ghosts, so it's like spooky and scary that way. It's back to school, fall vibes. It also takes place in Virginia, which is like one of the best places to experience fall. I might be biased, but look it up, it is. But if you didn't know, this is a 4-book series by Maggie Stiefvater, one of my favorite authors, and basically it follows this group of unlikely friends. Our main character, Blue, goes to public school, and her parents and her like wider family, all of the women in her family are like psychic or have some kind of paranormal supernatural ability. So she comes from this long line of psychics, but she herself doesn't have any powers, and she doesn't really understand why. Her family doesn't really understand why, but they still like love her for who she is. But she's always been told to stay away from the Raven boys, which are boys that go to this private school in the area, but she kind of like runs into them one time and they strike up this unlikely friendship, and they kind of find out that they kind of have similar goals. Blue really wants to tap into her psychic abilities, and Gansey, who's the leader of this group of Raven boys, is like looking for this Welsh king along these like magical ley lines. It's a really hard book to explain because it sounds very convoluted unless you're like actually reading the whole story and understanding what it is about, but definitely has like dark academia vibes because these kids all go to private school. Most of them are kind of wealthy, so there's that aspect. Also, it takes place in fall in Virginia, like I said, and they're literally like out hunting ghosts and like magical paranormal beings. And Ronan, one of the boys, actually has superpowers, and one of the boys, Noah, is actually a ghost. So there's lots of good fall things in this book, and it's just amazing. You should read it any time of the year, but I think it would be particularly amazing to read this in fall. And last but not least, in my back to school little section of this video, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This was one of my favorite books that I read last year in 2020, and I still absolutely love it and could not recommend it enough. And it fits perfectly in this back to school kind of section because our main character, Pip, I think she's a senior in college, and for her senior capstone project, she decides to investigate this case in her town that has kind of gone cold. They think it's been solved, but she doesn't believe that the person who was actually apprehended for the murder is the correct murderer, so she wants to open this back up and actually figure out what really happened. So we definitely have the spooky, scary thriller aspect, but also the school aspect going on in this book. And honestly, this book is just so good. You're kept guessing the whole time on who the killer is, and you're just following along with Pip, and she makes like lists and maps throughout the book, and there's like interviews, like court documents. It's a really cool read. I would definitely very highly recommend it. It's also an excellent audiobook, literally perfect book to read in the fall. Alright, in this next section, we're gonna jump into some books that have supernatural elements to them, as that it's a huge fall Halloween kind of thing, you know? So I have another Maggie Stiefvater book meant to you, and that is the Scorpio Races, and I feel like this is like a very underrated Maggie Stiefvater book, but it is probably my favorite, my like #1 absolute favorite. Basically, this book takes place in this Scottish-inspired world. These characters live on this like rocky island off the coast of Scotland. Every year they have the Scorpio Races, which are where all the men in the town race these wild water horses that come up at this time every year. Our main character, Puck, is a girl, but she really wants to race these water horses, so she's determined to be like a jockey in this race this year. And these races are like really intense. Like usually every year somebody dies, and it's just like it's a lot. But Puck is determined, and she thinks she's ready, but crazy things happen. I need to reread this because honestly I don't remember everything that happened, but I do remember the vibes of this one were immaculate. They're on this rocky island in Scotland. It's kind of cold, it's kind of chilly. They're racing horses. Like, I don't know, it just makes sense for fall in my head, so you should read this. Next, I want to recommend 2 graphic novels that are perfect for fall. I love me a graphic novel, and these 2 are no different. The first is probably my favorite graphic novel of all time, and that is The Witch Boy by Molly Ostertag. This is actually a little series, so there's a couple more books out already, but it basically follows the story of this kid, and in his family, women are witches and the men are like shapeshifters. And he has never shapeshifted, but he really wants to learn to be a witch, and he's kind of seen as like more feminine than the rest of the men in his family, and the men in his family don't want him to learn to be a witch because that's just not the way they do things, and that's not the way their gender stereotypes are set up. But our main character is like, no, I'm gonna be a witch, screw you, dad, and he does, and it's great. I really love this story. It's just like a cute, wholesome little story, and it includes obviously like supernatural creatures, so it's perfect for fall and like Halloween time. Like, this is a good like wholesome Halloween story, you know? If you're like kind of a scaredy cat, this is a good one for you. Same for Taproot by Kizzy Young. This one is so cute. It's a romance between a gardener and a ghost, and it's complicated obviously because the love interest is a ghost and they gotta figure out like if they need to let go or how to make it work. It's just very wholesome. It's pretty short, but it's so cute, and you know, ghosts, fall, Halloween, makes sense. Speaking of ghosts, City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab is chef's kiss incredible and is such a good fall read. Basically, it follows this young girl, and her parents are professional ghost hunters, and they have this ghost hunting TV show, and in the new series they're like traveling around to a bunch of different famous haunted cities and documenting their experiences there, going to all of like the famous haunted places, and they take her along with them and she explores, and her parents don't know that she can actually like see and speak to ghosts and like travel to the shadow world. So she actually has like a ghosty friend, I think, that goes around with her and tries to keep her safe from the evil forces in the spirit world, but basically she still gets into trouble. And she's in like the most haunted cities ever. This first book takes place in Edinburgh, Scotland. It's just so good. This is probably my favorite Victoria Schwab, which I feel like is an unpopular opinion, but I absolutely love this series. I think it is so cute and wholesome, but also like fun and ghosty, and like it's not very scary. It's middle grade, so it's not very scary, but it is so cute. I love it so much, and it would be the perfect like fall middle grade series to binge. More ghosts can be found in Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. I know I talk about this book a lot on my channel, but I absolutely love it, and I feel like people have stopped talking about it, and I don't like that. So basically the story follows our main character 𝗪𝗪, who's a trans boy. Honestly, kind of a similar situation to Witch Boy by Molly Ostertag, which I recommended a little earlier, in that the men in 𝗪𝗪's family are like ghost hunters and ghost summoners, and the women are like not that. They do something different magically, I don't really remember, but 𝗪𝗪 wants to prove himself as a ghost summoner, and he doesn't see why he wouldn't be able to do this. So although his father and family won't perform the ceremony for him, he goes out and he's trying to do it himself. He accidentally summons the ghost of his classmate Julian, and he has to figure out how to get him back in his body, or like what happened to him also, but he's just like walking around as a ghost with 𝗪𝗪 and haunting him. But then they have this cute little relationship, fall in love. Oh, it's so cute. And the writing in this one is so rich, and I loved all of the cultural elements in this book. Like they do 𝗙𝗵𝗄𝗏 𝗪𝗏𝗏. I don't know if that was right. Like the Day of the Dead ceremony, they have that in this book, and they do a lot of other like cultural events, and just the way like 𝗪𝗪's family's cuisine and like the way they, I don't know, lots of cool stuff in this book. It's just a very like a richly done story. The writing is amazing, the characters are amazing, the setting is amazing. This is like quintessential Halloween reading right here, like bringing ghosts back from the dead, falling in love with them. And I think it's like set around Halloween time, because I think 𝗙𝗵𝗄𝗏 𝗪𝗏𝗏 is in the fall. I'm just making stuff up. Perhaps I will fact check when I edit. Anyway, this book is so good. It was one of the best books I read in 2020, and if you haven't read it, you need to read it immediately. And then last but not least, in my little supernatural category, I want to recommend Mooncakes by Suzanne Walker. This is an amazing like witchy queer supernatural graphic novel. I don't want to tell you too much about the plot because I don't want to give it away. It's really short, but basically this book's really cute and really fun and perfect for fall/Halloween. And last but not least, our final category is spooky thrillers. So let's just jump right into it. The first book I want to recommend is actually like the only book that's ever actually scared me, and that is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This is like a haunted house-esque mystery thriller. It's so good. It's one of Riley Sager's best, and the haunted house vibes definitely make this a very perfect fall read in my opinion. So in this book, we're following our main character Maggie, and Maggie, when she was younger, lived in this haunted house with her family. They actually moved out shortly after moving in because it was so haunted, and her dad wrote this famous book that was supposedly nonfiction about this house that got really famous and has kind of followed Maggie around her whole life. So when her father passes away, Maggie goes to this house and is determined to prove, I guess, that the book was either fiction or nonfiction. She really thinks that it was fake and that her dad made it all up, but she starts to have some really weird, creepy experiences in this house, and she's like, oh shit, maybe my dad wasn't lying. This book is so good. I know I'm saying that about every book on this list, but this is like perfect, quintessential, spooky, creepy, scary fall. So read it. Another Riley Sager that I think has excellent fall vibes is Survive the Night. This book follows our main character Charlie, and Charlie is in college, but last semester something really terrible happened to her roommate and best friend. She was murdered one night out at the club, and Charlie carries a lot of guilt about this because she was there that night but left early and left her friend alone. So she kind of blames herself for this happening, and she just is in a very depressive state. So she decides she wants to drop out of school and go home. Because she is in this depressive state, she agrees to go home with this man that she does not know, and he says, oh, I'll drive you to Ohio, and she's like, okay, sure, and gets in the car with him. So she's a little crazy, you know. So anyway, they're going on this journey home, and obviously there's a detour, crazy shit happens, and it is a very twisty journey. For the first half of this book, you think you know exactly what's gonna happen, but then after that 50% mark, you're like, oh my god, there's just twist after twist after twist. Personally, I had no idea what was going to happen. I had no idea who was actually behind everything or what was going on. Maybe, I don't I don't sit there and like try to guess what's going to happen in my thrillers usually, so that might be why you might guess it might be very obvious to other people. I don't know. Long story short, I absolutely loved this book. I think it definitely has perfect fall vibes. I mean, I think it takes place in fall. It's in like October. It's rainy, it's dark, they're in a car at night. It's like slasher film vibes, very fall to me, so I definitely would recommend this one as well. Honestly, I loved this one. I think it's my favorite Riley Sager of all time. Another absolutely perfect fall book, Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. When I originally read this book last year, I was kind of like iffy about it, but let me tell you, I never have stopped thinking about this book. Like everything that happened in it is just like ingrained in my memory, and I take that to mean this was an excellent book, and it really is. It's an excellent book. So basically we're following our main character, Noemi, and Noemi is this kind of like high society girl who lives in Mexico City, but then they start getting strange letters from her cousin who was recently married and lives at this estate with her husband in a more rural area of Mexico, and they just are very concerned about her. So Noemi's father sends her to go check on her cousin and live with them for a while, just make sure she's okay. And she does that, and she's in for a lot more than she anticipated. The husband's entire family lives here, and they're creepy as hell, and she thinks that they're poisoning her as well as her cousin, and there's just a lot going on. There are creepy mushrooms in this book, a haunted house, creepy old grandfathers that believe in eugenics. There's a lot going on in this book, but it was so good. The writing was just beautiful. It definitely gives you like spooky vibes. At one point they're walking in a foggy graveyard. This book is definitely perfect to read around Halloween time and just in the fall in general. I think it will really get you in the mood. It definitely, like if you're a seasonal reader, this is the perfect book to read in fall. I can't, the vibes are so good. If you're looking for a little bit of dark academia to get you in the fall mood, I definitely would recommend The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I recently read this one and I was surprised at how much I liked it. It's not like the most revolutionary or like incredible thriller, but it was a lot of fun and it definitely has great dark academia vibes. It takes place in Cambridge University in the UK. We're basically following this young woman named Mariana and her niece that goes to Cambridge, and one of her friends recently was murdered, and everyone, well, her niece and like Mariana start to be convinced that it is this professor on campus named Edward. He has this really weird gang of girls that follow him around. They're all dressed in white. They're like his special students, and he has like special study sessions with them. It's like a secret academic club, but it's only women in this club. And Edward is an older man. So definitely creepy vibes with him. More and more people get murdered, and what is going on? So there's a whole murder mystery aspect. The dark academia setting in Cambridge. Cambridge is like just like one of the oldest universities in the world, I believe. So perfect for the dark academia vibes, even better than anything that would take place in the US. And they all are like studying the classics. And like is he a Greek professor? I don't know. But this book was really fun. Like, don't expect it to be revolutionary, but it was really fun, and definitely if you're looking for dark academia vibes for fall, one of the best. The next book I want to recommend is Night Film by 𝗪𝘁𝗻𝗄. In this book, we're following our main character. He's an investigative journalist. His name is Scott. But anyway, this book starts off in October where this woman named Ashley Cordova is found dead in an abandoned warehouse in Manhattan. It's originally deemed a suicide, but our main character Scott doesn't believe that this is true. He believes she was actually murdered, and he starts to dig into her past, which also means digging to the past of her father, who is a legendary cult horror film director with some pretty scary, creepy shit in his movies. All of his movies are like banned from being seen in like real theaters. He just has like underground showings of these films, and Scott just really believes that his daughter dying is not a coincidence. He believes that it is somehow related to this man and his mysterious life in all of his movies, and so he sets off to investigate what actually happened. This is a really unique read. It probably is like slightly too long if we're being honest, but overall amazing book. Like, this is like a masterpiece of a book, I would say. It just is so well put together and thought out, and it definitely has some really creepy elements. Our main character actually breaks on to the property of this film director at one point and is like going through all the sets. Someone is following him. It's really, really creepy, and I think there's even some darker stuff that happens. This is a really excellent read. It's multimedia too, which is fun. I always like something like that. Definitely would recommend this one if you haven't read it, and don't be intimidated. It looks intimidating, but it's really not. It was an amazing read. I love this one so much, and it would be perfect to read in the fall. And last but certainly not least, I want to recommend They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. This is a really fun book and definitely has dark academia vibes. We are following two different timelines. One is that of a professor at this university, and she is a serial killer, but she's kind of like a Robin Hood type serial killer because she only murders men who have committed violent sexual crimes against women. Honestly, my hero. So it kind of like details her escapades going around finding different targets and actually carrying out her plan on them. She's killed lots of people and has not yet gotten caught, but the most recent murder she committed might have been a little bit too close to home, and some people are starting to look at her a little bit suspiciously, and she's like, oh shit, how do I get myself out of this? And then the other timeline we're following is of this student who's attending this university. It's her first year. She and her roommate have this kind of like parasocial relationship. She, I think, probably has a crush on her roommate. Her roommate leads her on a little bit. She's actually interested in this guy that does theater with her, and our main character witnesses some shit that pisses her off. And eventually these two timelines converge. This is an excellent book. It was so funny because I read it because so many people like directly recommended it to me. But it's really good. It gives you dark academia vibes, spooky, scary thriller vibes. So it's a great fall read if you're into stuff like that, and I definitely would recommend. And I think that's about it for all of my fall book recommendations. I definitely am like a kind of a vibe reader, if you know what I mean. So these definitely all have fall vibes. So if you're looking for a book that would be perfect to cure your seasonal reading desires, definitely any of these books on this list should have you covered. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down below if you've read any of these and loved them, or what your best fall recommendation is. I would love to know. Don't forget to check out all of the links in my description. I have good stuff linked down there all the time. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And yeah, hopefully consistent video uploads for the rest of the year. So definitely hit that subscribe button and like this video if you liked it. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.